Conception of no birth. The Prajnaparamita and the Lankavatara. The Prajnaparamita Sutra opens with a chapter on the life of the Bodhisattva, which is based on the realization of transcendental knowledge, and a gist of it reads something like this. Subhuti is asked by the Buddha to teach the Bodhisattva how to attain the perfection of prajna, to which Subhuti answers. There is no such being as a Bodhisattva on whom a man can lay his hand, nor is there anything to be known as prajna. Hence to talk about the attainment of its perfection is meaningless. In fact, to think or imagine that there is something doing or going on is against the true notion of mind, which is pure, that is, absolutely beyond all forms of functioning. That which is known as mind in discursive reasoning is no mind, though without this, mind cannot be reached. In any event there is mind that is no mind, and that is neither being nor non-being, neither to be perceived nor to be grasped. Further, the Bodhisattva, so called, has no abiding place. Therefore when prajna is realized by him, he is not abiding anywhere, not in any of the 5 skandhas, that is, he is not to be located in a world of matter and form, nor in a world of consciousness. Again, there is nothing in prajna that gives one a clue to its being grasped. When we say that a bodhisattva has realized prajna, we may imagine that there is a bodhisattva, that there is prajna, and that the latter has entered into the consciousness of the former. And, further, that he takes hold of it as if a mother is tenderly cherishing her baby. But this altogether misses the mark. For the bodhisattva is now in a samadhi called Summa James Sarvadharma Paragrayata, i.e. samadhi of not grasping anything. Sometimes Sarvadharmanupadana, i.e. samadhi of not getting attached to anything. Here he has gone far beyond the 5 skandhas and has no consciousness whatever of doing or not doing anything. Because he is not at all conscious even of the samadhi itself, because such samadhi is non-existent, does not present itself to his consciousness. Why? Because in his no-mindness he has no cravings, cherishes no attachments of any sort. In his mind, which is no mind, that is, when he is abiding in his transcendental consciousness, he is not conscious of a world of particulars where things are always conceived in opposites. Further, Subhuti goes on. The Bodhisattva, while disciplining himself to attain an enlightened mind, an all-knowing mind, a mind with no outflowings, an incomparable mind, and a mind which is beyond the attainments of Sravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, knows no such mind to cling to as one that is to be grasped by him. Why? Because an all-knowing mind has no outflowings, because what is known as an all-knowing mind is indeed without outflowings and is beyond the reach of one's grasping. Therefore, in this mind there is no possibility of being grasped. Why? Because there is what may be termed no-mindness, in which mind and no mind are merged as one, and which cannot be designated as either being nor non-being, and which is thus altogether beyond our perception and apprehension. When these statements are read for the first time by those who have not been initiated into the Buddhist way of thinking, they may appear as the climax of absurdity. Think of a man who is a no-man seeking after a mind which is a no-mind. And, further, think of him as not knowing of anything being grasped by him when for all we can guess he seems to be in the midst of so-called enlightenment itself. What could be more nonsensical than this? And we are asked not to get alarmed nor terrified. The Mahayana teaching according to the Prajnaparamita seems to be navigating over a stormy ocean where the boat has lost her compass and all her sailing paraphernalia. Can this really be the case with Mahayana Buddhism? The one most important thing that students of Buddhism have to realize at the very outset of their study is that Buddhism is not a system of philosophy, has nothing to do with speculations as such, has no intention to present a logically coherent formula of thought. What the Buddhist teaching professes to do is to get us truthfully acquainted with the ultimate facts of existence. It requires us firmly to grasp facts based on personal experience. For when this is attained, all the rest, including intellection, theorization, or philosophizing, will follow by itself according to the requirements of a mind in which the experience takes place. It will, therefore, be a great mistake to take the Mahayana Sutras such as the Prajnaparamita or the Lankavatara, for a series of discourses on the metaphysics of the Mahayana school of Buddhism, as Rajendra Lala Mitra puts it. The Madhyamika school or the Yogacaram may have their own metaphysics in their sutras. But as far as the Mahayana sutras are concerned, perhaps excepting a very few, they have nothing to do with metaphysics or epistemology. What they contain are plain statements of facts experienced by the Indian Buddhist minds. That is, they are most direct statements based upon the intuitive knowledge these minds have gained regarding the religious life. Their statements may be logically untenable or impossible, but they have not lost sight of the facts or experiences that have flashed through their minds. All their paradoxes, contradictions, incomprehensibilities, and even all their apparently nonsensical utterances must be reduced first of all to their intuitions. Buddhist students are, therefore, requested to dig patiently down to the bedrock which forms the basis of these utterances if they desire to make them reveal their inmost secrets wrapped up in these uncouth or terror-inspiring phrases and propositions of the Prajnaparamita. It will be interesting to see how this Asiddhata, no-mindedness, view of the religious experience in the Prajnaparamita turns into the Siddhamatra theory, so-called, of the Lankavatara. Both start from the untenability or unknowability of ultimate reality, which is beyond the dualism of being and non-being, of birth and death. And while the one ends in a form of negativism, the other comes to an affirmation, saying that there is nothing but mind, that the mind alone is the last word one can say about the world. At the bottom of these two propositions, however, there is but one experience, for both aim at the realization of one and the same fundamental truth. As we have already treated of the Lankavatara view of Siddhamatra, let us proceed to see what the sutra has to say about what may be termed the no-birth view of existence. This will clear up not only the position of the Prajnaparamita but also of the general Mahayana attitude towards the problems of ontology. While in the Prajnaparamita we are impressed with the idea of emptiness, the Lankavatara does not make so frequent references to it. True, there are statements concerning existence being like Maya with no reality or substance. But one can trace in the latter sutra a more manifest effort to bring out the self-realization which will reveal to us a realm of no birth and death, or, rather according to the sutra, of no birth. When there is no actual perception of the truth, no actual seeing of the origin of things, all these philosophical views end in nihilism. All these views include such notions as continuity, birth, work, destruction, existence, nirvana, path, fruit of action, truth, etc. This being the case, we must be always in touch with the Buddhist experience itself when what seems to be a philosophical theory such as the subject of this chapter, the no-birth view of existence, is being discussed. What is meant by no birth? It is one of the most fundamental ideas of Mahayana Buddhism, and is closely associated and almost interchangeable with such terms as emptiness, no self-substance, non-duality, ultimate limit, nirvana, no form, no yearning, etc. In the Lankavatara it is frequently mentioned together with the first three of these terms. Because of emptiness there is no birth. And as there is no birth there is no world of particulars in which the notion of self-substance obtains, and also that of duality or opposition or pairs of opposites. And when this is realized one has what is technically known as compliance with reality not born. This already has been treated in one of the previous chapters of the present work. The following quotation from the Lankavatara may help us to understand the close relation existing between the four terms, sunyata, anutpada, advaya, nisvabhava. At that time the Bodhisattva Mahamati asked the Buddha saying, "Pray tell me concerning the four characteristic features of existence. When they are understood by myself and other bodhisattvas, we shall speedily abandon the discriminating of being and non-being and attain the realization of the highest knowledge." Then the Blessed One said, "Listen, O Mahamati, to what I tell you. The idea of Sunyata belongs to the domain of imaginative contrivance. And as people are apt to cling to the terminology of this domain, we have the doctrines of Sunyata, Anutpada, Advaya, and Nisvabhava i.e. with the view of freeing them from the clinging. Briefly, there are 7 sorts of emptiness. Emptiness of appearance. Emptiness of self-substance. Emptiness of non-action, emptiness of action, emptiness by which is meant the unnamability of existence, emptiness of the highest degree, by which is meant ultimate reality, i.e. supreme wisdom, emptiness of reciprocity. What is meant by emptiness of appearance? Existence is characterized by mutual dependence. Individuality and generality are empty when one is regarded apart from the other. When things are analyzed to the last degree, they are to be comprehended as not existent. There are, after all, no aspects of individuation such as this, that, or both. There are no ultimate irreducible marks of differentiation. For this reason, it is said that self-appearance is empty. By this is meant that appearance is not a final fact. What is meant by emptiness of self-substance? It is because there is no birth of self-substance by itself. That is to say, individualization is the construction of our own mind. To think that there are in reality individual objects as such, is an illusion. They have no self-substance, therefore they are said to be empty. What is meant by emptiness of non-action? It means that harbored in all the skandhas there is, from the first, nirvana which betrays no sign of activity. That is, their activities as perceived by our senses are not real, they are in their nature quiet and not doing. Therefore, we speak of the non-acting of the skandhas, which is characterized as emptiness. What is meant by the emptiness of action? It means that the skandhas are free of selfhood and all that belongs to selfhood, and that whatever activities are manifested by them are due to the combination of causes and conditions. That is, they are not by themselves independent creating agencies. They have nothing which they can claim as belonging to their self, and their karmic activities are generated by the conjunction of many causes or accidents. For which reason there is what we designate the emptiness of action. What is meant by the emptiness of the unnamability of all things? As this existence is dependent upon our imaginative contrivance, there is no self-substance in it which can be named and described by the phraseology of our relative knowledge. This unnamability is designated here as a form of emptiness. What is meant by great emptiness of ultimate reality, which is supreme wisdom? When the supreme wisdom is realized in our inner consciousness, it will then be found that all the theories, wrong ideas, and all the traces of beginningless memory are altogether wiped out and perfectly empty. This is another form of emptiness. What is meant by emptiness of reciprocity? When whatever quality possessed by one thing is lacking in another, this absence is designated as emptiness. For instance, in the house of Srigalamachari there are no elephants, no cattle, no sheep, etc. And I call this house empty. This does not mean that there are no bhikshus here. The bhikshus are bhikshus, the house is a house, each retaining its own characteristics. As to elephants, horses, cattle, etc. they will be found where they properly belong, only they are absent in a place which is properly occupied by somebody else. In this manner, each object has its special features by which it is distinguished from another, as they are not found in the latter. This absence is called emptiness of reciprocity. O Mahamedi, these are the 7 forms of emptiness, and of these the last mentioned one is the lowest kind and is to be avoided by thee. Further, O Mahamedi, there is no birth by itself, nor are things said to be unborn, except when a man is abiding in a samadhi. Therefore, we say that there are no births. O Mahamedi, when we say that there are no self-substances, it means no birth, according to the deeper sense of the word. All things have no self-substance, seeing that there is only an instantaneous uninterrupted continuation. And that changes from one state to another are observed throughout existence. If there is self-substance which does not yield itself to changes and transformations, this universal flow of becoming will never take place. This is what is meant by the non-existence of self-substance. What is the meaning, O Mahamedi, when we say that there is no duality? All things exist in pairs like light and shade, long and short, black and white. The one cannot be separated from the other. So are all things like samsara and nirvana, they are not two. It does not mean that where there is nirvana, there is sarisara also, or that where there is samsara there is nirvana. For they issue from different causes. Yet they are not two, and so are all things, like samsara and parinirvana. Duality is only possible by postulating something that is not dualistic. Nirvana and samsara are evidently two. They are not to be merged indiscriminately, but so long as we cling to this dualistic thought we are unable to reach the unifying center of thought where is the realization of the Buddhist life. This transcending the duality of existence is called here non-duality. For this reason, O Mahamedi, thou shouldst discipline thyself in emptiness, birthlessness, non-duality, and non-substantiality of self. This was then expressed by the Blessed One in the Gathas. I have always been preaching emptiness which is above eternally and extirpation. Samsara is like a dream, like Maya, and yet there is no disappearance of karma. So are the sky and nirvana, which are two forms of nirvana. The ignorant wrongly discriminate where there is no action, but the wise go beyond being and non-being. At that time the Blessed One said to Mahamedi, O Mahamedi! Emptiness, birthlessness, non-duality, and non-substantiality of self, this is what is taught by all the Buddhas in all the sutras. Indeed, there are no sutras in which this teaching is not to be met with. But, O Mahamedi, what is expressed in the sutras is in accordance with the way of thinking cherished by all beings. It deviates from the right path, it is not the talk directly established in the truth of suchness. For example, O Mahamedi, the thirsty deer taking the mirage for water and abiding by it, does not realize that there is no water here. In like manner, the teaching of all the sutras is an appeal to the discriminating habit of mind on the part of sentient beings. Lt is not the talk on the truth of suchness as established by supreme wisdom. Therefore, O Mahamedi, conform thyself to the inner meaning and do not allow thyself to be engrossed in words of teaching. From this quotation we can see that these four terms, sunyata, anutpada, nisvabhava, and advaya, mean the same thing, or rather express so many aspects of the me fact. When it is said that all things are empty, it does not mean that all is void, but that particular objects as such have no ultimate reality. Particularization is the construction of mind, it has no birth. In the objective world, that is to say, nothing has been created in this world which can claim to be absolutely real, that is, to be in possession of self-substance. For existence is forever becoming. There is nothing in the world of particulars that retains its self-substantiality or self-identity or unchangeable and unchanging selfhood throughout eternity. The idea of becoming presupposes relativity. That is, duality, and as long as this duality or multiplicity is adhered to as final reality, this solid, hard-shelled world will resist the penetration of our intuition. As the result, there will be no fusion of subject and object, this and that, self and not self, which means an eternal quarrel between the two, and consequently eternal unrest. When emptiness, no birth, and non-substantiality are accepted, non-duality or non-multiplicity must be recognized as true also. All these are related ideas. In the Sagathekam we have no birth and suchness, ultimate limit of reality and emptiness. All these are different names for one thing. Do not wrongly discriminate and regard them as non-existent. As in the world Hasti is also called Kara, and Indra is also called Sakra or Purandara, so with all things there are many names for one and the same thing. Do not wrongly discriminate and regard them as non-existent. Form and emptiness are not different, nor does no birth differ. Do not wrongly discriminate. All erroneous views arise from asserting difference. Suchness means no birth. The Buddhist conception of immortality. Relatively speaking, no birth implies no death. And when the Mahayana philosopher declares that existence has the nature of no birth, does he mean that the world as it stands is immortal and not subject to the law of causation? How does this view vary from that of the other Indian philosophers who uphold the hypothesis of a creator and his immortality? In short, in what respect does Buddhist immortality differ from other forms of immortality? This was the question proposed by Mahamedi, who puts it in the following form. The doctrine of immortality advocated by the Blessed One seems to me not different in any way from that of all the philosophers. For the latter,